Can
So
I
the
please get
request is
my
denied.
bond? I would like to talk to my lawyer before we start this.
You haven't talked to her, Mr. Watts?
I spoke with her.
He spoke with me Thursday and I didn't,
Yeah,
we had stuff that we had said then, but I have not heard from him since. So I'm trying to figure out, can I talk to him on a breakout or I don't know
Well,
if that
I'll
works.
allow it. I really need to get started with this evidentiary hearing if we're going to have one, but
Okay,
Mr. Watts, I'll allow you to have a short breakout session with your client at this time. So we'll recess. Mr. Watts, is there any announcement to be made at this time?
not at this time, Your Honor. Thank you. We're ready to proceed to prelim.
Very well. And the state may call their first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Brian Dunlap. Do you recall July 20th of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
And why do you recall that day?
From the events that happened around 5 o'clock or so, I had a woman knock on my door. And when I answered, she was distraught. So I called 911 to get the police department there.
Okay. And did you know this woman?
No,
Okay. And um, was she, you said that she was distraught. Was she injured or,
yes.
and explain to the court what sorts of injuries that you
Uh,
seen?
I believe it was on her left arm. She had some lacerations and was bleeding. And I did offer to help clean up the wound. And at that time, she did not want it, want the wound cleaned up. She
Okay.
wanted the police department to see what happened.
Okay. And did she explain to you what happened
Yeah.
to her?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And did you tell 911 what she had told you, or did you just call 911 and then they just sent somebody out?
When I called 911, I was interpreting what she was telling about her story to the 911 operator.
Okay. And just a brief synopsis, what did she tell you had happened to her?
She told me that there were two ladies that came to her apartment. Um, one of the ladies was holding her stomach, saying she needed to go to the hospital. So um, Beverly gave them a ride, and then they were giving her directions. And at some point, she mentioned to them, "This is not the way to the hospital." And at that point, she said that they threw her out of the car and stole her car.
Okay. And were you able to figure out about how far away she was from? I mean, was this right by your house
No,
or?
no, she had to walk at least a quarter to a half a mile to make it to my house.
Okay.
There's another house within eyeshot of my house, but it's probably 3 blocks or so, and there was nobody there. She went to that house first, and then she saw my house up on the hill, and she walked up to my house.
Okay. And did she identify herself at some point to you?
Yes, I mean, yeah. So I had to put my dog up. He doesn't let anybody come in the house. And so I put him up, and then when I came back, I would start asking her questions. And she told me her name, how old she was, and she was pretty distraught. She was definitely in shock when I talked to her.
Okay. And what did she tell you her name was?
Beverly Zilke.
And how old was she or is she?
I think she said she was 85, 86.
Talk any further about what had happened with
Yes.
her?
Yeah. When the sheriff's department got there, she had to tell the story over again. And like I said, she was definitely in shock. So the story was kind of, I mean, she said the same things, but there were, how do I say it? There were instances, input that she didn't tell me in the beginning. Like, she had her daughter's dog with her, and they somehow kept the dog. they threw her out of the car and then just took off with the dog. She was pretty distraught because she was a dog setting for her daughter. That was
see.
one of the things I remember. She did say that one of the girls threatened that she had a gun. And at that point, I think that's when they kicked her out, said that she would kill her.
Okay. And this whole time, that, you know, about how long do you think she was at your house, Miss
It was
Zilke?
it was over an hour.
Was she in the same state most of the time that she was at your house?
Yes, she was pretty, yeah, she was in shock. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and you mentioned before shock, distraught. Was she crying or did she?
Really, I mean, she's a strong woman from what I can remember, but the only time she really cried is when she was worried about her daughter's dog.
Okay. And did she have you call anyone for her beside? I mean, obviously you called 911.
No, because she didn't have her phone. They had her phone, so she didn't remember the numbers.
Oh, okay.
I do know that the sheriff's department called her or had her call her bank to shut off her credit cards because she was worried about them using her credit cards.
And when she came to you, did she have anything with her?
No, no, just the clothes on her back.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. I don't think that I have any further questions for you. Your Honor, although I may need to have him stick around for possible just identification. But otherwise, no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Watts, any questions for Mr. Dunlap?
Not for this witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Dunlap, I'm going to have you go ahead and stay with the Zoom meeting. I'll ask you
Okay.
to mute yourself at this time. Until your release, I'm going to ask you to stay with us. Okay?
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. Are you asking that he be sequestered again as well, Mr. Watts?
Please, Your Honor.
All right. We'll go ahead and put you in a waiting room, Mr. Dunlap, in case you're recalled later. Thank you. Next witness, Ms. Norris.
Your Honor, the state calls Beverly Zilke.
Ms. Zielke, I'm going to administer an oath to you at this time.
I do.
All right. Ms. Norris, you may question the witness. You can put your hand down, ma'am.
Please state your name for the record.
Beverly Zilke, Zielke.
And Ms. Zilke, in July of this year, where did you live?
Oh,
Where were you living when that happened?
oh God. Well, I lived in the apartment complex.
And that's in Wichita.
Yes, it is.
Do you recall an incident on July 20th?
What incident are you referring to?
Did you have to talk to law enforcement on July 20th about something that happened to you?
Yes.
And can you explain to the court what happened to you on July 20th?
Well, it's sort of a long story. Do you want to hear everything?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, the girl that lives in the apartment complex called and asked if she could come down and look at a cookbook. And I said, well, yeah, that would be fine. And the other girl's name, I think is it Elizabeth? Is it the small girl that lived in the same apartments? And so I thought she'd come. The doorbell rang. And it was I didn't know her name, but I found out today it was Wendy. And she came, she said, is she here yet? And I said, no, she should be here anytime. It was shortly after the other girl came. And Wendy and I sat in the living room and just chit-chatted about small talk. And the other girl was in the room with the cookbook in a bedroom in the very back of my house where I have a bookcase. And finally she said, she's taking a long time. I think I'll go back and see what she's doing. I said, oh, okay. And she went back there and it was quite a while. And I thought, my lands, what's going on? So I got up, went down the hall, started to open the door. And it was locked, and I thought, huh, and I tried it again and it unlocked. It was unlocked. So I went in and the other girl was sitting on the floor looking through the cookbook, and Wendy was standing there just kind of watching her. And she finally continued to watch, and then she said, all of a sudden, just out of the clear blue sky, she started rolling. She said, "Oh, oh, oh," and rolling on the floor. Um, and and Wendy said, "Oh my God, she's having another attack. She needs to go to the she needs to go to the emergency room. Could you possibly take us there?" And I said, well, yes, I'll do that. And so we all got down and got in the car, and the thin girl sat in the, is her name Elizabeth? I think someone told me it was the thin girl, and and Wendy, the heavier set girl, she got in the back seat, and we went down Rock Road to the highway and started going on the highway and turned to go to, and it was towards Andover. And I know there's two stoplights, but one, and then the second you turn and go down the street to go in Andover. And when we got to the first one, I was started to go, and she said, "No, turn here." And I said, "That's a country road." And they said, "Yeah, it's a shortcut because her insurance won't be accepted at the other place, and it will at this other place that we're going to." I said, "Okay." So we started going down the country road and went and went and went and the road and road. And I said, "Where is this place? We've passed Andover." And she said, "Don't worry, it's down the road more." And I went down and went down, and finally I just stopped the car and I said, "I want to know where we're going, because we've been on this road a long, long time and we should be there." And all of a sudden, that Wendy held her purse up, and she said, "See this purse?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "I have a gun in it and I will use it." And then I said, she jumped out of the car and yanked my driver's side door open. And I also had my daughter's dog, because she was in the car, little Chloe, because I was babysitting, because my daughter went on a cruise. And so I was babysitting her dog. And she grabbed my hand by the door, which would have been my left hand, and she started pulling it and pulling it and pulling it. And she had long fingernails, and they cut into my skin all the way down. I ended up having blood running. I had blood running clear down my arm. And the other girl was the thin girl that lived in the apartment. She was pushing me from the back, and Wendy was pulling my arm and yanking me, and I was trying to hang on with my right hand to the steering wheel and stay in the car. And they said, "Get out of the car and give me your purse and your car." And I said, "No, that car belongs to me, and so does my purse." And she pulled me out, and my whole arm was blood. It was all bloody. And when they threw me in the dirt, and when I stood up, I had blood all down my arm, and the dirt was stuck all over the whole entire arm. And I finally they zoomed off in the car, and I didn't know, and I was yelling when they were driving off, and I said, "Where is Chloe? Where is Chloe?" And they were already gone. They didn't care. I didn't know if they took Chloe or if Chloe was out of the car. I walked around. I couldn't find her. I finally started walking down the road, and I went to a farmhouse that I came to and knocked on the door. They were not home. So I walked back out in the road, and I walked on down quite a ways to another farmhouse. I went to the door and knocked on the door, and the man answered, and I said, I need to call the police.
The transcript captures an evidentiary preliminary hearing in the case involving defendant Wendy Scott, where the court evaluates whether sufficient probable cause exists to bind the case over for trial on multiple serious felony charges arising from a violent and deceptive incident involving an elderly victim. The proceedings begin with testimony from a civilian witness who encountered the victim, Beverly Zilk, shortly after the incident. He describes her as visibly injured, bleeding, and in a state of shock, recounting how she reported being deceived by two women who pretended to need medical help, coerced her into driving them, and ultimately forced her out of her own vehicle, before stealing it along with her belongings and her daughter's dog. The victim herself provides detailed and emotionally compelling testimony, explaining how one of the defendants feigned a medical emergency to manipulate her into offering transportation, after which the defendants redirected her onto a remote, rural road under false pretenses, threatened her with a gun, physically assaulted her, and forcibly removed her from the vehicle, causing significant injuries to her arm. Her testimony emphasizes both the use of deception and force, key elements that support the prosecution's theory of aggravated kidnapping and robbery. Importantly, the victim identifies Wendy Scott in court as one of the perpetrators, although the defense attempts to challenge the reliability of this identification by highlighting that the victim had not previously identified the defendant through formal law enforcement procedures such as photo lineups. Additional testimony from a detective further strengthens the prosecution's case by outlining the investigative process, including locating the stolen vehicle, apprehending the defendant, and obtaining statements from her. According to the detective, Scott admitted involvement in the scheme, describing a plan devised with an accomplice to lure the victim out, under the pretense of needing medical assistance, and then take her car and belongings. However, the defendant's account appears partially inconsistent, as she claims limited memory of events after leaving the victim's apartment, possibly due to drug use, which the defense later raises to question the reliability of her statements. Despite these challenges, the prosecution successfully argues for amendments to the charges, elevating the severity of the case by upgrading the kidnapping charge to aggravated kidnapping due to the bodily harm inflicted on the victim and increasing the theft charge based on the value of the stolen vehicle and items. The court accepts these amendments and finds probable cause on all counts, including aggravated kidnapping, mistreatment of a dependent elderly person, criminal threat, aggravated robbery, felony theft, and interference with law enforcement, thereby binding the defendant over for trial. The defense does not present evidence at this stage, focusing instead on cross-examination and procedural objections. The hearing concludes with the scheduling of a jury trial and pretrial proceedings, marking the transition from preliminary examination to formal prosecution. In a final emotional moment, the defendant personally addresses the court, pleading for temporary release to visit her critically ill daughter, who is reportedly suffering from brain cancer. However, the judge denies this request, citing the seriousness of the charges, the defendant's criminal history, and concerns about flight risk, while also expressing skepticism regarding the verification of her claims. Overall, the hearing reflects a strong prosecutorial case built on eyewitness testimony, victim identification, and partial admissions by the defendant, contrasted with a defense strategy aimed at undermining identification reliability and the credibility of statements, all within a procedural framework that emphasizes the court's role in determining whether sufficient evidence exists to proceed to trial rather than adjudicating guilt at this stage.